The news that Scotland Yard Police, the Metropolitan Police Service of London, has allegedly issued an arrest warrant for Ibrahim Traore, the young and defiant leader of Burkina Faso, sent shockwaves through the world. This was not just another development in the long list of controversies surrounding global politics. It was a moment that revealed the growing intersection between Africa's new brand of leadership, Europe's lingering influence, and the geopolitics of justice. Whether symbolic or real, such an action carries weight far beyond legalities. It touches sovereignty, legitimacy, and the balance of power between Africa and the West. To understand why this incident sparked outrage, admiration, and suspicion all at once, one must carefully untangle the global layers behind the decision, the reactions that followed, and the implications for the future of Africa's political independence. The starting point of this saga is not London, but Ouagadougou, the capital of Burkina Faso. Since his rise to power in September 2022, Ibrahim Traore has made himself a central figure in the African resistance against neo-colonial control. At just 34 years old, he became the youngest head of state in the world, representing not only his country, but also an entire generation of Africans disillusioned with failed promises of development tied to Western powers. His speeches, marked with fiery rhetoric and uncompromising stances, have resonated across Africa. He has expelled French forces, reclaimed control of resources, and joined Mali and Niger in forming the alliance of Sahel states. To the youth, he is a hero. To Western policymakers, he is a challenge that refuses to conform. When the rumor or report of Scotland Yard's warrant first surfaced, analysts immediately asked, why now and why him? The United Kingdom, though no longer an imperial ruler over Burkina Faso, still maintains influence through broader Western structures. The narrative presented was that Traore had violated international law, possibly tied to allegations of human rights abuses or economic mismanagement. But in Africa, the perception was radically different. Many saw it not as justice, but as punishment for standing tall against the economic and political dominance of Western powers. After all, when African leaders make deals with Western oil companies or comply with financial institutions, no such warrants appear. But when a leader challenges the old order, suddenly accusations of wrongdoing are raised. The global reaction was almost instantaneous. African social media platforms exploded with outrage, with hashtags like Ajuj Hands Off Traore and African Sovereignty trending in multiple countries. For many, this was a clear example of double standards. Why, they asked, does the West mobilize its legal and security apparatus against African leaders who reject Western dictates, while turning a blind eye to powerful figures in Europe and America accused of similar or worse crimes? The timing of this alleged warrant coincided with Burkina Faso's recent agreements with Russia and China, particularly in defense and infrastructure. This raised further suspicions that the legal step was politically motivated, serving as a tool of intimidation rather than impartial justice. In London, Scotland Yard itself remained ambiguous, fueling more speculation. Was this truly a police-driven action, or was it influenced by political pressure from higher institutions? Britain's complex relationship with Africa, once colonizer, now an observer with declining direct influence, but still tied to Western alliances, made the move all the more controversial. What gave it a global dimension, however, was the response from leaders and institutions beyond Africa. The African Union quickly convened to discuss the matter, framing it as an attack on sovereignty. Russia and China released statements condemning what they called Western overreach, highlighting their support for Traore's government. The United States and France, by contrast, refrained from commenting directly, but Western media outlets amplified criticisms of Traore, painting him as authoritarian. The stage was set not just for a legal dispute, but for a geopolitical standoff. Traore's own response was as bold as his reputation suggests. Rather than retreat or adopt a defensive posture, he took to the national stage and addressed the issue head-on. He declared that no foreign court or police agency has authority over Burkina Faso's sovereign affairs. He emphasized that the days when African leaders bowed before foreign powers were over. In his speech, he called upon African youth to recognize the deeper meaning of such moves, that true independence must be defended not only in economics and politics, but also in the realm of law and international legitimacy. His words were broadcast across the continent, strengthening his image as a fearless defender of African dignity. What makes this episode particularly significant is its timing within Africa's broader transformation. Across the continent, a wave of new leadership is emerging that rejects old patterns of dependency. Leaders like Traore Assimi Goïta of Mali and Abdourahmane Tchiani of Niger are part of a bloc that challenges Western influence in ways not seen in decades. By aligning with non-Western powers and advocating for economic self-determination, they are creating new fault lines in global politics. The arrest warrant, therefore, became more than just a piece of legal news. It became a symbol of resistance. To their supporters, it confirmed that the West feels threatened by Africa's rise. To their critics, it signaled the risks of confrontation with established powers. International law, of course, complicates matters. The principle of universal jurisdiction allows courts in certain countries to pursue individuals accused of serious crimes regardless of nationality. But the selective application of this principle has always been controversial. When leaders from weaker states are targeted while those from powerful nations enjoy immunity, the credibility of such actions erodes. In the case of Traore, many legal scholars questioned whether there was sufficient basis for the warrant. Was it grounded in genuine evidence, or was it, as some African commentators argued, a weapon of political warfare? The fact that no transparent charges were made public further fueled the suspicion that this was less about justice and more about pressure. The African street, however, responded with unity rarely seen. Protests erupted in Burkina Faso, with thousands marching to demonstrate support for their leader. Similar rallies took place in Mali and Niger, where citizens saw the attack on Traore as an attack on their broader struggle for sovereignty. The symbolism of Africans uniting against what they perceived as Western interference was not lost on observers. For decades, divisions and external manipulation have prevented such solidarity. Now, ironically, a Western legal move was achieving what years of rhetoric could not, uniting Africans under a common cause of dignity and resistance. On the international stage, the controversy also revealed fractures within Europe. While Britain seemed to lead with the warrant, other European states were less enthusiastic. Some feared that pushing too hard against Traore would backfire, increasing anti-Western sentiment in Africa and accelerating the pivot toward Russia and China. Others pointed out that Europe's economic interests in Africa, particularly in resources, could be jeopardized if relations soured further. This revealed a contradiction. Western states want to maintain influence in Africa, but the very tools they use, sanctions, legal pressure, diplomatic isolation, often strengthen the resolve of leaders like Traore and deepen Africa's shift away from Western orbit. The media played its role in shaping the narrative. Western outlets largely framed the warrant as a legal necessity, focusing on allegations of authoritarianism. African outlets, meanwhile, highlighted the hypocrisy and double standards. Social media, as usual, became the battleground where narratives clashed in real time. Videos of Traore's speeches went viral, often accompanied by commentary mocking Western institutions. Memes compared the warrant to colonial tactics of old, portraying Traore as the modern Thomas Sankara, defiant, fearless, and unyielding. The emotional resonance of these narratives cannot be underestimated. For millions of young Africans, this was not just news, it was inspiration. The long-term implications of this event are still unfolding. One possibility is that the warrant fizzles out, remembered only as another failed attempt to discipline an African leader. But another possibility is that it marks the beginning of a new era where Western institutions double down on legal and economic pressure to contain Africa's independence movements. If the latter occurs, Africa will likely respond with greater solidarity, accelerating integration efforts such as the alliance of Sahel states and the push for Pan-African institutions. The symbolism of legal persecution could, ironically, fuel the very unity the West has long feared. At the heart of the matter is a fundamental question: who has the authority to define justice in the global system? For Africans like Traore, justice cannot be imposed by powers that once colonized and exploited their nations. For Western institutions, however, justice is universal and must be applied without regard for sovereignty. This clash is not just about one leader, it is about the very architecture of the international order. Can a new generation of African leaders redefine the rules, or will they be constrained by the old structures built in the colonial era? As the dust settles, one thing is clear: the alleged Scotland Yard arrest warrant for Ibrahim Traore has already achieved something extraordinary. It has elevated him from a national leader to a continental symbol, from a controversial figure to a global talking point. It has forced the world to confront the contradictions of justice, sovereignty, and power in a multipolar age. Whether loved or hated, Traore has once again demonstrated that he cannot be ignored. And in doing so, he has written yet another chapter in the story of Africa's long and unfinished struggle for true independence. In the end, this is not merely about one man or one warrant. It is about the future of a continent that refuses to be dictated to, the courage of a generation determined to rise, and the global powers struggling to adapt to a new reality. For Africa, the message is unmistakable. The battle for sovereignty is no longer fought only with guns or economics. It is fought in the realm of legitimacy, law, and global perception. And for the West, the challenge is just as clear. The old methods of control are losing their effectiveness, and new approaches will be needed in a world where leaders like Ibrahim Traore refuse to bow.